Welcome to Ask the Expert with noted radio host Steve Sleeper. Each week, Steve interviews entrepreneurs and professionals and shares their intriguing stories of success and service. Now, here's radio veteran Steve Sleeper.
And our guest today is Amanda Jarratt with the Jarratt Law Firm, which is East Bay, the Tri-Valley in California, San Ramon, California. Hey, Amanda, how you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
Good, good. Hey, tell me a little bit about yourself and your firm.
So I'm a California licensed attorney and a certified mediator. I've been practicing family law for a little over 8 years, and I've been licensed for over a decade now. Right now, my primary focus is on divorce mediation, and I'm especially fond of working with divorcing couples who have kids. This just might be because I have twins of my own that I share custody of.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you do a lot of mediation. Talk to me about what that is and how does that help?
Well, divorce mediation is a comprehensive alternative to divorce court. And by that I mean that both parties actually come work with me together, and we sit down in a conference room and hash out all of the same issues that they would go to a judge to have decided in court. The main difference being they keep the decision-making power in their own hands, and at the end of the day, they come to agreements rather than getting a judge to decide who's right and who's wrong. Mediation is beneficial to parties for multiple reasons, but probably the three most important reasons to most couples is that it saves a substantial amount of time, money, and stress in comparison to getting divorced in court. And for parties with children, it's especially helpful because after the divorce is over, they've still got to keep working together. And so if you have a less contentious divorce, not to say that mediation is totally peaceful, but it certainly is a lot less bitter, and a lot less expensive, so people can move away from it and not have long-standing hatred towards each other, which can be really helpful when you're trying to get little Johnny to soccer practice 3 times a week.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Have you ever had a time where mediation just wasn't working out between the two parties?
Yeah, no, I've definitely come across that situation. Rarely, because a lot of the screening is done in the beginning before they get there. And so people who come to mediation, we do a divorce mediation orientation and make sure that they understand what they're signing up for and also kind of what their commitment to it is, that they've got to understand that nobody's going to be right and wrong. It's all about agreements, right, and giving a little to get a little. And that the primary focus is to find win-win solutions, not to, essentially be told you were right and the other side caused all the problems in your marriage.
Yeah, okay. So since you do that pre-screening and since they're working together to figure it out, that really does ensure mediation's going to be fair then, doesn't it?
Yeah, and mediation, I think part of it with fairness, oftentimes couples will come to you and they're concerned that you'll prefer one side over the other. And the truth of the matter is I think attorneys like myself who are drawn to mediation are probably drawn to it because they're better at seeing sort of both sides of the story. Somewhat like a person who would be drawn to the bench, to be a judge, is that they can see how both sides have their, positions and that they're not right or wrong. They're just varying different, views of the same thing. And so for me, it's like I like to help people find that middle ground, right? That's something I've always enjoyed doing as an attorney. And in mediation, I'm better able to do it because I don't have one side who expects me to be biased in their favor, and then I don't have another attorney on the other side who's asking me, who's trying to be biased in favor of their client, and then you're getting people positioning, But to keep mediation fair, there are a few things that I do personally to help clients feel comfortable with the process and to make sure they feel like they're both, getting the same amount of attention and that I'm listening to both sides. And the first thing is I do make sure that we cover all the legal issues that come up in a divorce, even if the parties themselves don't bring those forward. And so, it's sort of a checklist approach. Do we need to make, this is what the law says. Do you guys need to work on agreements in this area? The second thing I do is I recommend that, parties review the agreements they come up with independent counsel at the end of the day, so that they can have somebody who's just on their side tell them, this is what was good or bad about the agreement in your favor, or, what was maybe what you gave up and what you got on the other side as well. The third thing is I try to avoid any one-sided communication with either party, unless they both agree that they think that would be helpful. And we do that by making sure all the meetings are obviously together. I try not to do any phone calls. If I do happen to have a conversation for some reason with one side, then, it's disclosed to the other side. But the other thing is I use online collaboration space, which is essentially a program we can sign into, and everybody gets to see the messages and the documents that we've posted, and it just keeps everybody on the same page. So they feel like the information is equally distributed.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now, so by the time it gets to the judge, all he needs to do is just make it legal then, huh?
Yep, exactly. We're basically submitting a judgment to the judge for a rubber stamp. In fact, it literally is a rubber stamp. They don't pin sign their judgments. And so, I make sure all the documents are completed. They never step a foot in court. It's mailed to the courthouse. And usually in, a somewhat, varying period of time, they return it to us depending on which county we're in. California is a more impacted judicial system, and so divorce, one of the reasons why mediation is so wonderful is because of how much less time it takes. I mean, we're literally talking about a few, 3 to 6 months as opposed to 2 years and sometimes longer if you were to go to court.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, what are the grounds for divorce in California?
There's only 2 grounds in California, and the first one is irreconcilable differences, and the second one is incurable insanity. And so far in 10 years of being an attorney, I've never accused anybody of incurable insanity. But that's primarily because you don't have to prove irreconcilable differences. You do have to prove incurable insanity.
Right. Alimony, do you still see that?
Yes, of course. I mean, it's not called alimony anymore, but we dub it spousal support. But it's one of the biggest issues that couples have to argue over, because so many things in family law, at least in a community property state like California, are pretty cut and dry. If you can establish that the property is community property, it's going to be divided in half if you were to go to court. Of course, in mediation, you can divide your property any way you wish, and the judge, as long as you sign off on it, the judge will sign off on it as well. Spousal support, though, is one of the areas where it's, we still have a lot of room for discussion because it's not a formula. There, a lot of people get confused because there's a calculator they can use to come up with something called temporary spousal support, but that's just while you're going through the case. For long-term spousal support, we actually have to consider a number of soft factors, like whether or not you stayed home with the children, and if you helped each other get educations, and your health, and things that, are not calculations to determine how much spousal support and how long it should be paid.
Okay, I see. Now, how about child support? Is that a formula?
Now, that one is definitely a formula.
Okay.
And in California, it's a pretty complicated formula if you try to do it by hand. I laugh because I still have these memories of my early days in family law where I thought I didn't need to buy one of the fancy calculators they sell to us to figure out child support. And I spent a lot of hours trying to figure out the formula that they use. And it's a rather lengthy, algebraic formula that eventually spits out a number. And there's so many variables that needless to say, I didn't get very far before I went out and purchased the software. And so there's a couple different, probably at least 4 or 5 I've seen, different calculating softwares that essentially crunch the numbers that are set out by the legislature that need to be considered. And probably for the general public, the most important things you can, consider for factors that are going to affect child support in California, it's going to be the timeshare, which means how often you actually have your kids in your custody, each party's income, the tax deductions each party has, and whether or not each party pays any health insurance premiums. These things have probably the greatest impact on what the child support calculation is in the end.
Now, you talked a little bit about custody. Is that typically joint custody, or what do you see there?
Yeah, fortunately in California, we're a very forward-thinking, progressive state, and so unlike a lot of states that are, because I have clients whose kids have moved to California and they're from other places, and they tell me, oh, they prefer moms here. But now in California, there's no gender preference. It's actually prohibited by law, and they, not to say that there might not be some older, judges on the bench who might still have a slight preference, but a lot of the newer judges will tell you right from the beginning that their default position is that you're going to get 50-50 custody unless you can show, which is joint custody, unless you can show a reason why the other parent shouldn't get custody. And so reasons being violence, drug addiction, alcohol abuse, that kind of thing, where it's actually a concern for the safety or the well-being of the child, not just, this is a baby and so they need to be with mom. I mean, that, used to be the younger the child, the more likely they would stay with mother. But I'm seeing more and more cases where both parties will share, sometimes even as much as 50-50, maybe exchanging every day with a small baby so that they can have frequent and continuing contact with both parents.
Okay. What's the most common question you get, Amanda?
Honestly, it's got to be, how much is a divorce going to cost me?
Yeah.
Which, as an attorney, is a near impossible question to answer, because there's so many variables involved when you go to court, from how many times you're going to have to appear and how much fighting the other side's going to do. But as a mediator, luckily, I am able to provide services on a flat fee basis, and that makes the cost of divorce, predictable. And so, like I said, one of the benefits is cost, and that's because you can, I can estimate how many times we're going to meet, and likely, and actually sell it to you as a package of how often we're going to have to get together. I know how many issues are going to be, that kind of thing. And because the work's done by a single professional, and so it doesn't require, us to spend a lot of time waiting in court, fighting things out. Divorce mediation is remarkably cheaper than going to court, and I'd estimate that it even sometimes is 60 to 75% cheaper than going to court.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And is that your primary business as a mediator?
Is divorce mediation? Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't mediate any other types of cases, because that's my specialty, has been family law for years. And so I, at this time, have only accepted divorce. I mean, obviously custody could come in the door as well, but I don't see as many unmarried couples looking to mediate, to be honest with you.
Okay.
They just don't have as many issues, and custody can be a difficult issue sometimes. And so like with my married couples, generally, if they want, like they have sort of a long-term relationship, and that's how they're able to come in and actually navigate custody. Oftentimes with the unmarried couples, what I find, a lot of the ones that are in court anyways have not been together very long, and so their cases tend to be very acrimonious.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
They don't have the relationship, the foundation built in order to work together, and so oftentimes they're just, they need they don't need a mediator, they need a referee. So unfortunately, that's what judges do, not what I do. I facilitate conversations and provide objective valuations of settlement offers. I don't make decisions for the clients.
Our guest today, Amanda Jarratt, with the Jarratt Law Firm in San Ramon, California. Amanda, how can you be reached?
Oh, well, you can give me a call at 925-480-7850. Or if you don't want to, it's after hours, or you don't want to make the call, I am reachable on my website, which is divorcemediation.com, and I have an online scheduler there, so clients can schedule appointments with me even if the office is closed.
Oh, that's great.
And Steve, thank you. And I want to thank you again for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to let me be on your show.
Yeah, thanks for being on the program today.
Well, thank you, and you take care.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to Ask the Expert with Steve Sleeper. Join us next time as entrepreneurs and professionals share their intriguing stories of success and service.